Hello, and welcome back to I'll Watch What They're Watching, where we are curious and adamant about cinema. I am one of your hosts. My name is Kiri.
And I'm Adam.
And today we are going to be doing another Arts and Charts episode. We're talking about 1994's The Shawshank Redemption and 2023's Sing Sing.
Yes, the prison episode.
Yes.
Really excited to talk. These movies are very similar and also very different. And so I think this will be a very good example of taking a subject and looking at it from a more artistic perspective versus a more commercial perspective, perhaps. What was your kind of experience with these two movies? Had you seen them before?
Yeah, so I had seen Shawshank Redemption. No, it's been years, and I don't know. I watched it when I was still at home or on TV or something, so I'd seen it edited. I've never actually seen like the full, like kind of uncut version of it, and I had never seen Sing Sing before. I know you were kind of the one who brought that to the table. So had seen Shawshank, definitely had been a while, had not seen Sing Sing at all. So walking into kind of both of these was, with Shawshank, there were parts I definitely remembered, but others that I didn't as much. So certain storylines and stuff, and we'll kind of get into it. Storylines that I really didn't like being there, other storylines that I think were really great. Yeah. So, but what about you? You said you'd seen both of them, right?
Yeah, I love, first of all, that you said you saw Shawshank on TV. Really, as we talk about the charts aspect of Shawshank Redemption, it was actually kind of a commercial failure when it first was
a
released.
box office bomb. Yeah.
Right. Stephen King adaptation, so kind of some expectations or some built-in success there with a couple of the previous ones up to this point. But it did not do well at the box office. In fact, they went to the big premiere in LA. They showed up expecting a ton of people to be in there. No one was in the theater. They literally walked out and handed free tickets to people saying, if you don't like this movie, we'll pay for you to have dinner. So I can't remember exactly what they said, but for whatever reason, the word of mouth just wasn't there. And it didn't become popular until physical release. That was really big as far as renting. But it was Turner Broadcasting, TNT, that had this crazy deal where they bought essentially the rights to show this forever and only there. And they showed it as much as they possibly could. So it's one of those things where people just watched it and watched it and watched it all the time on TV growing up.
Well, yeah, because really interesting. I saw the same thing, was reading up on it and was like, wow, this was a massive bomb. Like, this was a box office bomb. And it was competing with the likes of, Pulp Fiction.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump, that was the one I was looking for. Yeah, so really did not do well. Warner took kind of a huge gamble and sent, I want to say 230,000 physical copies to like, the movie rental stores. And that really took off. People started seeing it. Word of mouth kind of got around. And then, it kind of took off even more because it was on TV all the time. And so more and more people stumbled onto it and were like, oh, wow, this is great. And so now, here we are now. It's number one on the IMDb, the top 250, like the number one spot is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, that means kind of the most commercial-ish movie that people kind of consensusly agree is number one. Don't mean to be a jerk and fact check you, but I did write it down. It's 320,000 copies. Okay, not trying to be that guy, but I am being that guy. Just throwing that out there.
I switched two numbers.
Just I have it down. Want to make sure the listeners don't write angry mail. They'd probably more write angry mail than I'm fact checking you. So whatever.
Fair enough.
Anyways, I actually hadn't seen it until probably a year or two ago. Especially with rated R movies, I grew up in a very religious household and didn't really watch any rated R movies until my later adult years. So that was one, obviously, looking through the IMDb Top 100 that I knew I had to watch, and I did watch and enjoyed it. It is one of those things that, and I think you touched on this in some of our texting back and forth, when you watch something like that is number one on this list of the best movies of all time, and you maybe don't have experience with it growing up and have like a piece of memory or kind of something tethering you to it, it maybe doesn't hit quite as hard. Like, yeah, this is a perfectly good movie. I don't know that I would ever put it in my top 10 movies, but an enjoyable movie to watch. And Sing Sing, Spoiler alert, I absolutely adore this film. Saw it in a empty theater. It's kind of funny. In my local theater in Yakima, Washington, they have obviously the movie posters outside the movies when you are walking in. And basically, I have this email I'll send to the manager there and like, hey, are you getting this movie? And it's usually types of more art forward films, or they're going to be an award contender, but they're not really, they're having a limited release first before they get to their bigger release. I'll talk more about that because this release of Sing Sing was really weird and awkward. Anyways, it seems like whenever I'm sending this email about this movie, when I show up, they're not going to have a poster. It's just going to be a piece of paper taped with the words Sing Sing in the little poster frame. This has happened multiple times. Some of these more, artsy type movies. Walk into the theater. I am alone. Watch this movie all by myself at the movie theater. I do want to say right now, this will have spoilers in this episode. Give you a second to turn this off if you don't want me to spoil Sing Sing or The Shawshank Redemption. That should be enough time. Anyways.
And we'll because of the nature of arts and charts.
Yeah.
Charts were going to be much more liberal with the spoilers, just because we're kind of expecting more people to see them. With the arts part, we'll stay a little more vague, and if we do delve into spoiler territory, we will actually tell you right before.
Right.
Hey, this
so I'm about to spoil a major piece of Sing Sing for me, and that is that a majority of the actors are playing themselves.
Yes.
And so I did not know that until the credits rolled and just started crying. Just could not believe it. I was shocked. And so I think at that point, all the themes of the movie really started coming up for me and started hitting me. Just amazing. Obviously, I rewatched it for this podcast. We had some delays in recording, and so I watched it again. I really like this movie. I'm really excited about it. I'm glad I rewatched it. There's something I'll mention a little later that I caught this time. So good stuff happens. And yeah, that's my experience with these movies.
So let's kind of dive right in. Shawshank Redemption, directed by Frank Darabont. He went on to direct a handful of others. He also directed The Green Mile, which is another Stephen King adaptation. It's starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman as kind of the two leads. Like I said, based on a Stephen King novel. And then we have Sing Sing, came out, 30 years later, directed by Greg Quaidar, starring Coleman Domingo and Clarence Macklin. And it is, I don't consider this a spoiler, but it is based on a true story. I'll go ahead and recap Shawshank, and then you can recap Sing Sing.
Yeah, perfect.
So Shawshank Redemption, for those of you who haven't seen it, this man, Andy Dufresne, is convicted of double homicide. He ends up going to prison for life. He gets tossed into this legendary, massive prison, Shawshank. While there, he ends up doing a variety of things that give the inmates a lot of hope. He always talks about, hope, never giving up. You see kind of the lives in and outs of these inmates. There's one really poignant storyline where you see one of the inmates get out and how he struggles with adapting to real life post-prison. You end up finding out that Andy was innocent as he claimed, and there's some storylines there. And then, like I said, this is really spoiler territory. The big thing is Andy actually ends up escaping. He digs his way out after 28 years, I think. He basically digs his way out of Shawshank, and that's kind of the big way it ends. He gets out, he goes to this city in Mexico, and he's reunited with his friend Red, who's played by Morgan Freeman. So that's more or less the idea behind Shawshank. Do you want to go ahead and recap Sing Sing for us?
Yes, absolutely. So Sing Sing, also a prison. Names of both of these movies are the actual prison. Sing Sing follows a group of prisoners that are in the rehabilitation through the arts program, or abbreviated RTA. It's a real program where they take place in different productions, plays, musicals, that type of thing. So you kind of start with them in a production and kind of the closing of that. And then there's this core group that meets together that talks about the future of what they want to do and different members to join. And so they bring in another member, and it's Coleman Domingo's character, Divine G. He's kind of the leader. And so he goes and he reaches out to this other inmate, Clarence Macklin's character, who's a little rougher around the edges. And so there's obviously some tension of whether they want to keep him in there or not. And so he comes in And it's just about this group coming together and really, I'd say, kind of discovering new parts about themselves, just kind of taking a step outside of the prison to literally become somebody else and to act and to get in touch with some of those feelings. There's one really poignant portion where there's the leader who's not a prison guard, but he's kind of in charge of keeping them on track, I guess. He kind of talks about how it's not very often that a group of men get to come together and share some of these really deep feelings with each other. So anyways, both of these stories are kind of anchored to parole hearings. And so you kind of have these different reactions of different characters getting in or getting out and some of the difficulties that they face of just being incarcerated. And again, it kind of follows the structure of they're developing a new play and they're learning different things and growing and that type of thing. And then also ends with Coleman Domingo's character actually getting out of prison. He did not dig his way out, but he, was granted parole. So he was able to leave. It does also end with a reunion hug though. So that's really nice. But yeah, it's a much more sort of close look at this particular program that the prison has of rehabilitation through the arts and kind of the process of you, the viewer, seeing someone actually start rehabilitating through that process.
Yeah, because I will say Shawshank, and part of it is because it's based off of a book and not real life. Shawshank Redemption is definitely more sensationalized.
Absolutely.
With the idea of he digs his way out. Oh, that's over 28 years. That's amazing. Whereas Sing Sing is no, this is actually how the prison system works. So yeah, let's talk about stories. Some comparisons I saw, they both go in, they're both innocent, or Divine G is at least implied to be innocent.
Yes.
Both, I think, do a really good job of kind of showing some of the problems within the system. I would briefly like to talk about the differences in racial representation.
Oh, sure.
Because, again, I've never read the short story by Stephen King, but did enough research. Morgan Freeman's character, Red, in the book, is an Irish-American redhead, and that's why his name is Red. That is not what he looks like in Shawshank Redemption.
Which I do appreciate that they make a direct joke on that. Someone says, why do they call you Red? He says, because I'm Irish.
Yeah. So I do appreciate them kind of poking fun at that. But yeah, I just did find it was interesting. I didn't do enough research into this, so I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I did find it interesting that except pretty much for Morgan Freeman, all of the characters are white, which I found interesting. I don't know how accurate that is. Again, I didn't look at history. It is Maine, so I don't know what the population there is like, but America's always been a big melting pot, and I found it very interesting that in Sing Sing, many of the characters were people of color, and in Shawshank Redemption, there's really only Morgan Freeman, and had they kind of followed the short story to a T, Morgan Freeman wouldn't have been cast in that role either.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just thought it was an interesting, again, I don't feel, as a white person, I don't feel like I have a ton of, I'm not sure what to say about that, other than just, it was something I noticed, and I do think that it's something that bears noting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a important aspect, especially as you start talking, both of these movies deal heavily with institutionalization, and kind of and I deliberately did want to watch Sing Sing again for this podcast, and Shawshank it feels like a fairy tale in a lot of ways. And I think they even say, I wrote it down, they say, prison is no fairy tale world, which I thought was funny because it felt exactly like a fairy tale, kind of how this plays out and how you get that redemption at the end. But they both deal with that so much. And one of the beginning scenes in Sing Sing, after they have this beautiful performance where he's reciting Macbeth, and it's this really powerful soliloquy, and then it goes right back to them standing in line for prison, and one of the guards berating someone for speaking out or something. And so even, in Shawshank, in Shawshank, they're beating people within an inch of their life or past that versus, but I think you get the same general feeling of just this, they're not treated like real people, that they're treated like they're not human. And so that was one of the biggest themes that I grabbed onto in both of these. You have a quote in Sing Sing. Again, this whole movie, as Kiri put it in their Letterboxd review, is it does feel a little bit, award kind of focus.
It's Oscar bait.
Oscar bait is the word I was avoiding. That I obviously don't feel that way. I love this movie, and I'll talk about how they really messed up their Oscar campaign. But it's a lot more of digging at those emotions, and kind of has these really poignant moments that the audience is going to feel something if they're watching this and trying to connect with these characters. And so there's this point where it's kind of coming into a head where this new individual is not really gelling with the group, and he has this outburst, and there's this tension, and one of the guys is like, hey, like, I had this really traumatic experience. Someone got stabbed in front of me. I felt their blood on my face. Prison is this horrible, horrible thing. And we're here right now to become human again. What we're doing right here with this theater and this performance that they're getting. And then in Shawshank, when they're doing the tarring the roof, Andy makes a deal with one of the prison guards to get all the guys beers, and he will do his taxes to basically help him commit tax fraud, whatever. Just kidding. He's just, tax loopholes.
The tax fraud comes later with the warden. With that guy,
this is just loopholes.
The guy inherits a ton of money and is talking about how the government's going to take it all. And Andy basically says, actually, if you do this, you get to keep it. And the guard is basically like, well, I don't know how to do that. And Andy's like, I mean, you'd have to hire a lawyer or a tax accountant, or I could do it for you.
Exactly.
The guy's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I mean, I fill out all the forms, and you just give me and my buddies, like, after we finish tarring this roof, we get beers.
Right. So then there's this line from Morgan Freeman's narration when they're all on the roof drinking their beers, and he's kind of like, nobody knows why Andy did what he did that day, and kind of he's not even drinking the beers, and he says, I think he did it just to feel normal again.
Yeah.
So again, there's these deep themes of normalcy and how prison just kind of sucks that out of people, and how there's this discovery process of kind of getting back to that new normal. So one of the things I mentioned at the tail end of that is narration. I wanted to ask you, Sing Sing, no narration. So you have a lot of there's a lot of shots. I love this about this movie. There's a lot of shots of like the outside looking in, whether it's through windows or through their cells, or there's a lot of window shots of looking on the outside. So a lot of beautiful imagery that people can kind of take that and pick up these feelings of hope or trying to get to the outside, or all these different things. Shawshank Redemption is going to tell you exactly what you should be feeling. Morgan Freeman's narrating the whole time.
Yeah, so something that you'll kind of learn about me, I am very picky with narration.
Okay, sure.
Because I am in the camp of, and maybe this is just like the film student in me. I had a professor say this one time, and so I was like, yes, this is gospel. I'm a big proponent of show, don't tell.
Yes.
And I think if you have to tell me, then we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think there are some really good, I have seen narration done really well. I just tend to be a little bit, it's funny that you say that, because literally we pulled it up and I already was like, all right, greatest movie of all time. Let's see. And my girlfriend is sitting here just like, okay, give it a chance. And it started and I was like, oh, good, narration. And she was like, you got to get.
Now, I do want to say too, I think in the grand scheme of things, this is a more tasteful narration than most narrators.
And that's what I was going to say as well. It also is tricky because when they actually asked King if they could turn this into a movie, he was basically like, good luck. I don't know how you're going to do it. Because
exactly,
it's all about Red's perspective. So I think adapting the novella to a film, I do think it works. They do have to kind of hand spoon feed you some of the emotions.
Right.
Narration still isn't my favorite thing. That being said, in this particular instance, I don't hate it. That's my take.
No, I think that's a very valid take. But, just again, in this episode being an arts versus charts, I think that is almost, if you had to explain to somebody, why is this movie arts? Why is this movie charts? I think that is one of the key things you can kind of point to of, well, in in a Sing Sing type movie, they're really trying to, again, show you with some different camera angles or different. I'll mention this right now. I know we'll talk a lot about different things. So this is the thing that when I watched it again, I noticed. There's this scene where Coleman Domingo's character, he has a bad parole hearing. He's not getting paroled. And his best friend, right next door, cellmate, dies of a brain aneurysm just randomly. And it's very shocking. And so he's just in a really bad place. And it's dress rehearsal night for this play that they've been working on. And he just crashes out. He just, really
starts screaming at people. Very, very out of character for him. He's kind of, you see him be the leader and the one who, like, when things start to sort of escalate emotionally, he's like, hey, let me step in. Let me try to connect with these people. And he's the one kind of always sort of diffusing the situation. And that night he just explodes.
Yeah, just full on crash out. It kind of reminds me, there's every once in a while you'll see these videos on Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media, and it's like whenever you see a list of top 5 acting performances or whatever, and it's just like men yelling, Daniel Day-Lewis and There Might Be Blood, everyone just going crazy. But anyways, in the context of this film and in this particular instance, it's a really powerful, really poignant. It's just kind of like everything you're feeling just kind of exploding to of like, man, we've been watching this and it's been really fun. Like, yes, we love this play and they're working together and it's this happy story, but they're in prison. And so it's kind of just this realization of like, they're in prison and this is really hard and they're actually working on redeeming themselves. But anyways, all this long story to say, when he's crashing out, the light on him is red. It's the perspective of a play, right? So you kind of have this background that's dark, and right on him, the spotlight is red. So if you go back and you watch this movie over again, the very first shot when he's giving the Hamlet soliloquy, it's blue, the lighting, and he's all covered in blue.
Interesting.
And so when I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, look at that. And so it's just kind of this really beautiful imagery of like when he's at his peak and he's really working through this and developing himself as a person through these plays. And he's kind of this, this neutral color that's kind of usually more calm or good.
Yeah.
Star Wars, right? Blue versus red. It's kind of this good color to be able to see that he is this good person. And then you flip it and it's during this huge crash out, it's all red. And so I just found that really beautiful this go around. Also, this is a stupid thing. Sorry, someone can correct me. I don't remember if it's Hamlet or Macbeth, because one of them is in the play they do, and they do the other one at the very first play. So I get confused. One of them's one's the other. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Going back to Shawshank a little bit, Shawshank's obviously, like I said, very sensationalized. I don't think it's even close to the #1 film of all time that Izzy talked to me. But I think the storyline with Brooks is by far the best part of the film.
Yeah.
And if we can just talk about that briefly.
Absolutely.
Because I think that is the part where it does kind of feel the most real. And it's that idea of, like, I loved what Morgan Freeman said, is he's like, in prison, he's an educated man. He's a respected man. Like, he's sort of this wise old man of the prison. In the real world, he's just an ex-con. And I find that just so fascinating. Like, we talk about, at least in Shawshank, it talks about rehabilitation. Like, do you feel you're rehabilitated? You can head out into the real world again. And it's like, well, you've programmed me to not be able to live in the real world, which I just think is such a fascinating take. Like, you see Brooks and he is unable to handle it because he does not know how to live in that world anymore. He doesn't know how to live, like, as an ex-con with arthritis. He doesn't know how to have a real job. He doesn't know, well, and even the living situation that they put him in, I'm like, man, that's not much better than the prison cells.
No.
It's a crappy bed with a crappy, it's dirty, and yeah, you just look at it and it's this idea of, prison. I feel like the idea, maybe this is, I don't know, naive of me to say, but for me, like, the idea of prison is like, well, they're not safe. And it's like, on one hand, a punishment, but it's on one hand, let's keep the public safe. So let's put the dangerous people behind bars. But at the end of the day, like the prison system, again, maybe this is just my naivete, is hey, this is where people can go to like make amends and get the help and the, quote, rehabilitation they need so that they can go and be productive, useful members of society. And you see, I mean, with Morgan Freeman's final speech, which is, one of the iconic film speeches at this point, where he's basically just like, yeah, you throw that word around, like you throw rehabilitation around, like, what does it mean? And he tries to say, and he's, I know, you have your, you think you know what it means, and it's so you can have a job and you can write on your little clipboard, but he basically is just like, whatever you're going to do, just do it,
Yeah.
Okay, I've been in here. Yeah, I feel, and he talks about how he would change what he had done before and how he would have spoken to his younger self. But at the end of the day, he's just like, look, write whatever you're going to write on your form and stop wasting my damn time. I've seen that scene before. It's always been very powerful, but that particularly, just still thinking about Brooks, seeing that scene again, I was like, yeah, he's right. At that point, he's basically like, what is rehabilitation? You don't know. I don't know. Whatever we think it is, it's not what's happening in here. So do whatever you need to do your job, let me out or not. I don't care. Yeah. Do what you're going to do and let me get back to my day.
Right. What does rehabilitation even mean? What is the point of even being here? So in Shawshank Redemption with Brooks' storyline, and it's very clear that they're making the point about how prison is set up in a lot of ways for people to fail. That they come in, they're going to be there, and if they do come out, they're set up to fail. And on the flip side, with Sing Sing, so again, Shawshank from a charts perspective, it uses those themes, it uses some of those heightened sort of experiences or things going on, and so where the viewer can make those same connections to the real world and say, oh man, we got to fix how this prison stuff is going. So on the flip side, Sing Sing, which is a little bit more of a grounded and true story, you have a very similar storyline where you have another person that used to be a part of the rehabilitation through the arts program comes in to speak with them, who has been paroled and is on the outside, and he's actually has a very successful life. He works in a bakery, he has his freedom, he feels really good about where he's at, and you can kind of see this glimmer of hope in a lot of the characters of like, wow, this is something that's possible. And so you have those same themes coming across, but in a more approachable way of, wow, if we can give people this outlet to be able to work on some skills that they can actually use on the outside of being authentic, of not putting on this mask or this face of being tough, but being willing to kind of fit into your role and do the things that lead to a productive, happy, successful life, you can do that. And there's this place for you. And so I think that, again, I don't, this is a spoiler alert for the whole arts versus charts. One isn't better than the other. They just, they fill these different roles. They fill these different purposes. And so I think for me, especially with Sing Sing, I just have this deep feeling of, wow, we need to make sure that we're promoting the arts. We need to make sure that people can feel like they can have authentic conversations and that there are paths to actual rehabilitation when we're watching this movie. And then I watch Shawshank Redemption. I'm like, yeah, prison sucks. We need to tear the whole thing down. So, like a similar thing, but maybe just a little bit different thinking about how that actually applies to me in my own life and what I could maybe do.
Yeah, so in regards to story, I think Shawshank is more fun.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's a more fun film to watch. It makes sense why it's, a big charts hit. It's a blast. It's very fun to watch. It's engaging. It gives you kind of, the warm fuzzies.
Yes.
I think Sing Sing is more maybe like poignant and applicable to sort of real life applications nowadays. And like you said, as someone who like grew up as a theater kid and who loves film, it really was cool to be like, wow, people are using arts in these really profound ways. And so I think the story was definitely, again, kind of just to sum up, I think Shawshank is way more fun. I think Sing Sing does a very good job at saying what it needs to say. And I think if taken and applied, can do a lot of good. I did want to mention this. Hated the entire Queer Bull Sisters storyline. Hated it.
Yeah, problematic.
And, I am a queer person, so me watching, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. Because that was a theme in the 90s. There were trans people who were villains. We talked a little bit about Silence of the Lambs when we were texting. That's a movie that it happens in. Anyway, and we'll move on. But I think you could have eliminated that entire storyline and wouldn't have missed much. But I want to dive into a little bit of the more technical stuff, just the acting. We'll start with Shawshank, and then I want to talk about Macklin in Sing Sing. I think Tim Robbins is great. He does a stand-up job. I think Morgan Freeman though is amazing. Morgan Freeman was just, because that was kind of one of his big. He did Driving Miss Daisy. Mm-hmm. And then he did Glory, and those were kind of what got him on the map. And then a few years after that was when he did Shawshank, which was kind of a big breakout for him as well. He was nominated for Best Actor in a Lead.
Very cool. Very well deserved. That's a good shout. Yeah, no, the acting's really good. I do really like Tim Robbins.
Me too.
He was almost played by Tom Cruise. Not sure if you knew that.
Yes, and Red was almost going to be Harrison Ford.
Oh,
There's a few people that they ran through, but Harrison Ford was one that they had considered.
So I actually really love the Tom Cruise story. Now, for the record, I really like Tom Cruise as an actor. I think he probably would have played this really well, but at the end of the day, I think that this was the right casting and the right job. There's a producer on here named Rob Reiner. He's very popular. He liked the script. He was very involved in getting this movie made. And basically, he's a good director. He's directed a number of films, including When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men. So obviously, he's worked with Tom Cruise in a number of different roles. They were ready to move forward with Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise said, I don't want to work with Frank Darabont because he's a first-time director. I need Rob to direct this movie. And so they actually offered Frank Darabont $3 million for the script and the ability for Rob Reiner to direct it. Now, a little backstory on Frank Darabont. He was a cameraman of your typical, started at the absolute bottom of the movie making business and just learned watching people and perfecting his craft. There's this really cool program that Stephen King did where you could buy the rights to any of Stephen King's written works for $1 if you were to make a student type film, basically just learn how to make a movie. And he made one of these movies, and Stephen King loved it. And so when he came and said, I want to do Shawshank Redemption, Stephen King said, absolutely, sold it to him for $5,000. So all this is going on, and he's offered $3 million. I'd say that'd be very difficult for me to turn down personally, but this was his dream. He knew he had something that would be good and that would stick. And so he said no, he stuck with it. And to Rob Reiner's huge credit, he supported him the whole way through and helped him through that.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. And then kind of to tie the knot on the story, Stephen King apparently, after everything had settled with Shawshank Redemption, sent Frank Darabont the check for $5,000, never cashed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool ending of that. So anyways, I had to mention that with acting. Yes, Tom Cruise would have done a fantastic job, but it makes a very cool story and a very, very personal one as far as the writer-director being so passionate about this project and wanting it to be his vision is something that's commended.
Yeah, and the other actor I did want to talk about was the warden, Bob Gunton, who played the warden. Because in the novella, he's not nearly as much of a character.
Okay.
Whereas, from what I read, in this, he is I think he's an incredibly compelling villain. The storyline where Tommy gets shot, that's not in the novella. He just gets shipped off to another prison.
Oh, no kidding.
And so just everything with Bob Gunton, I think, is... Because when you first meet him, you're like, okay, he's the warden, but he's not as bad as the guards. The guards are beating the heck out of people, or beating people literally to death. The warden's there, he has faith in the Bible, whatever. As the movie goes on, I think he becomes a really, really dynamic villain. That's part of the sensationalism as well. With Sing Sing, there's not really a villain. It's almost more like, look at the villain is the system almost. Whereas in Shawshank, you kind of need someone to hate, and so they're able to do that with one of the guards and with the warden. But again, with Shawshank being kind of sensationalized, with it being a fun film, I think it works. But with Sing Sing, I thought the standout was Clarence Macklin.
Absolutely. The whole award season, it seemed like everybody was kind of not only saying he should be nominated, but saying, oh, he's the clear front runner and he's going to win. He was not nominated at all. And it just feels, it's just so disappointing that they didn't get to showcase that type of a redemption story of he's playing himself. He's playing a guy in prison that joins the rehabilitation through arts program, and it is literally himself. He learned to act through this literal program that we're watching. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, Coleman Domingo got a nomination. He did not win. Sing Sing got 3 nominations total. Shawshank got 7. Neither of them won a thing. Just nominated. But yeah, Coleman Domingo, I thought when I was just doing research after, because I do it for this podcast, but this is also just me. It drives my girlfriend crazy sometimes. We'll finish a film and I'm on my phone for the next 45 minutes just looking stuff up. And that was the thing I noticed is I was like, oh, good. It got an acting nomination. I looked, I was like, Coleman Domingo?
Which is great. He deserved, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I just love Coleman Domingo's performance. He even says, I don't remember what movie he's talking about, but he essentially says, I do movies like this or the more commercial type movies so that I can do movies like Sing Sing. That's how he's so passionate about this type of almost knowing that it's not going to be this huge success. And kind of to that point as well, all the cast and crew agreed to be paid the same amount of money for this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I just love that so much. Yeah. I do have to take a minute to introduce my beef with A24 Studio.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, A24 has had this perception of kind of this like indie movie, kind of cutesy, artsy, moving a little bit more into the mainstream of things and having some of these sort of sleeper best picture winners or that type of thing. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
And I would say they kind of first got on radar. They were doing horror films that were like smart horrors. Midsommar, Robert Eggers' The Witch.
Right.
The Lighthouse. Yeah, so they kind of had been doing these very
elevated horror and
yeah.
So anyways, they start getting this award recognition, this award success. And so then they sort of, I don't know what it is. It seems like they caught this wind of like, we can be successful, so let's be successful. Mm-hmm. But the issue is they basically choose one movie each year and they say, this is going to be the movie that we put all of our effort into winning an award. So this last year would have been The Brutalist. The year before would have been Past Lives. The year before was Everything Everywhere at Once. But then the issue is there's these other movies that are great that get left behind a little bit. So last year it was The Iron Claw, which again, an amazing movie that probably should have gotten some nominations, Zac Efron at least. But then this movie was like impossible to see. It didn't make any sense at all. Basically, it had a release date in like June, and then all of a sudden it released. You could go see it. Some people on a limited basis, and then it was out of the theaters. You couldn't stream it. You couldn't do the weird like video rental thing. You just could not see this movie for months. It made no sense. And so when Oscar time comes around, nobody has seen this movie. And so the nominations weren't there. Even if they were, there was a nomination for Clarence Macklin, who knows what would have happened, because there just wasn't this buzz. There wasn't this, no one knew, because nobody could see this movie because A24, for whatever reason, did not make this movie accessible. So that's my beef with A24. Let the movie speak for itself. Like, this movie's so powerful and so beautiful and could have done so much at the award season and could have been a really special thing to highlight these people, again, doing rehabilitation through the arts, but that just missed it. It just feels like we really missed a moment because we couldn't have that in there. So that's a really disappointing thing. I wish that this movie would have been a bigger conversation, especially with the award season type buzz or thing. But I'll always promote it. I'll always push it forward. So hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have to see. I used to really be quite fond of A24. I am not 100% sure where I stand on them right now. They've come out with some movies that have been kind of hit or miss lately. I mean, I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I don't know. They're more recent movies. Sometimes I just kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, okay, here's another weird A24 film. Great. Like The Legend of the Ochi, I was like, that was the one this year that I was like, yeah, I haven't ever seen anything like this before. Like, I don't know. I was just kind of like, it looks like Bong Joon-ho's Okja, just worse.
Sure. I didn't see that movie. I thought it looked nice.
I thought it looked fine. I just was like, I didn't see it, but so I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass here. Maybe I'll watch it and eat my words. But it was one of those that I was just kind of like, okay, great.
Yeah, that whole thing is really interesting. Just the studio system in general, and A24 and Neon have kind of come up in recent years as your more small indie, but can be awards nominee or contenders, that type of thing. You do have to, I mentioned it to you early on in our friendship, you do have to watch The Studio on Apple TV with Seth Rogen.
Yes. Yeah.
He's the studio head of Continental Studios, which is a fictional, but it's supposed to be one of the main 5 Warner Brothers, Disney, that type of thing. It's amazing. It's so fun. They hit on so many things that us in the film circles are often talking about or critiquing. So it's really fun. Yeah. But anyways, I'm glad they got 3 nominations for Sing Sing, but just drives me nuts that you literally could not even watch this movie. It's like I don't know what deal they had. I don't know what, you couldn't even.
It got a very limited release. Like, it was really hard to get your hands on it.
But as I mentioned, you couldn't even do the like $20 buy it online to rent.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why you just could not watch it. I was lucky I went, day one, I was there.
Yeah.
But it was there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and then gone for months.
Right.
Just, I do not understand what they were thinking. And I left that movie when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, wow, that might be Best Picture. Like, it's just that type of movie.
Oh, dang.
Maybe I am admitting that there is some Oscar baitiness in there, because I think I'm a big fan of the Oscars, and so I think I kind of can pick that out a little bit of what they like. And I thought that was it. And I think in another world where they had a good release, if they cared about Sing Sing the way they cared about The Brutalist, I think it would have made Best Picture. I think Clarence Macklin would have been nominated. All of the above. It's just so sad. So flipping on Shawshank real quick.
Yeah.
The music was driving me crazy. It sounded so familiar. Do you know
Thomas Newman?
Thomas Newman. Do you know about the Newman family?
Oh, yeah. Thomas Newman's done a ton of Pixar. He also I believe he did The Green Mile with Frank Darabont. But yeah, I mean, it's Thomas Newman. He's done a bunch of Bond films. He did Skyfall. So yeah,
And for those that don't know the Newman family, they all basically do everything. Yes, cousin is Randy Newman.
Yeah.
But the one that I knew once I saw it, I was like, oh, was Finding Nemo. That's one of the ones that Thomas Newman did, and I was like, oh yes, those are the themes that I'm hearing in my head as I'm watching this movie is Finding Nemo.
Yep. And then the composer of Sing Sing is Bryce Dessner. And did you notice, like, he's also done some things recently. He did Come On, Come On. He did Cyrano, but the ones that people might have heard up more, he did The Two Popes. And then he also helped out in the music department for a lot of others, but those were kind of the only ones. Like, he did some additional music for The Revenant, but kind of the big one I saw was The Two Popes as far as what he has done before Sing Sing.
Oh,
but
very cool.
So he's done a couple of things, but yeah, Thomas Newman has done everything.
Yes, and if he didn't do it, then someone else in his family did.
I do want to talk briefly about the cinematography.
Yes.
I completely had forgotten that Roger Deakins does the photography. He's the DP in Shawshank Redemption. And Roger Deakins, I want to say, oh, I can't remember. It was one of the actors, maybe. There was someone who basically was like, I won't do this unless we get Deakins.
Oh, really?
So they got Roger Deakins for it. So I'm going to pull him up because he's done everything. He's won a bajillion Oscars. He did the cinematography for Blade Runner 2049, Skyfall, No Country for Old Men, 1917, Sicario, Unbroken, Prisoners, In Time, Rango, True Grit, The Company Men, Revolutionary Road, Doubt, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, The Big Lebowski, Fargo, and then Shawshank, The Secret Garden, Barton Fink. Like, he's done so much. Roger Deakins is one of the great cinematographers kind of our time. He's been nominated for 16 Oscars and has won 2 of those.
That's a pretty good track record.
That is a very good track record. So
it looks great.
It does.
Everybody talks about it, but the tracking shot to first see Shawshank, everyone talks about it because it is so good. It's just such, and the bus is coming around the corner and you get that pan over and the bus and
even the shots at the beginning where you see Tim Robbins' character, you see Andy drunk and you see him, fumble with the bullets and the bullets fall on the ground and you see his footstep outside. Like, again, it's just, for me,
and
like,
arguably one of the most memorable shots in cinema when he escapes from prison and there's the lightning and his hands are extended up to the sky. It's the movie poster and beautiful.
Yeah. So, Roger Deakins is great. Sing, kind of same thing. I love what you said about the outside looking in, and with Sing Sing in particular, it does a really good job making everything feel claustrophobic.
Yes.
When you're in that room with him, you got that tiny slit for the window. He's got books stacked everywhere. You're in this closet, basically, and it does almost this, like, frame within a frame where you see, like, just the doorway open to this little closet. It does a really great job of just making the viewer feel boxed in.
Yes. For anyone that hasn't seen Sing Sing and wants to see it, I would say really notice all the moments where it feels like you're on the outside looking in or the in looking out. I just think there's so many cool perspectives and things that you feel when you're kind of put in that box of looking at that. Pat Scola did the cinematography. He also did Pig with Nicolas Cage a few years ago.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that.
Yep. He also did Quiet Place Day One.
Quiet Place Day One. So a couple other things, but obviously not 16 Oscar nominees type things.
Shawshank Redemption, out of 5 stars. What is your Letterboxd rating?
A solid 4 out of 5.
That is also where I landed, where I was like, honestly, like a solid 4.
A lot of people put this at 5, number 1 movie of all time. I get why people do. I understand that, and I
don't think I do.
I can sit in that conversation. Again, back to arts versus charts. I think when you're trying to talk with everyone's wildly different tastes about everything ever as far as movies and film and all this stuff, I can get behind being like, Shawshank Redemption is a solid movie that I think everyone pretty much can get around and enjoy. And so that for that reason, I can say, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everyone could pick it up and find something they really dig in it.
And I'll say probably a lot of people listening to this right now think we're crazy by not saying this is the best movie ever, which is fine. Great opinions as well. But we're probably more in the minority than most, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, very solid.
But we liked it. It's a solid.
Yes. Solid 4. I think anyone could pick this up and have a real good time with it. I think it's too long. I had my problems with it. I think it's solid 4. I don't really see that going less than that, but I also don't really see me going any higher.
Agreed. All right. Sing Sing. What do you have?
Sing Sing. Also out of 4.
Very solid. Very solid. For me, Sing Sing does hit the rare 5. First thing I'll say, I think anybody will appreciate it a lot more on a rewatch. I wouldn't say tomorrow. I would say, months down the road, throw it back on, just kind of sit with it for a second. I told you this story. I think I was probably in the 4 range for most of the movie. And then when the credits start rolling and I realized that these guys were playing themselves, like all of the messaging and all of the themes and just like the beauty of it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this is real. This is real life. Like, this art is so beautiful and powerful. And like, what even is our purpose in life here? Like, why do we create art? Why do we interact with it? Why are we vulnerable? Why are these things? And so I think, again, and this is part of the reason why I think a rewatch will really hit. When they're auditioning for this new play, it's very like structured, and it shows these close-ups of each person, and it's like, my name is Mike, and I'm reading for the role of King Touch, or my name is blah, 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 I'm reading for the role of, and then they do, you know, all this stuff. Watching that on the second watch was crazy. I started crying at that part. Like, knowing what I know about the movie and then watching that, it's so incredible. And I didn't pick that up the first time because it's just kind of, it's a good scene, it's a good sequence, but coming back on a rewatch, it's so powerful. So I'm not telling you to change your score, but I think I would revisit it again in the future.
You think that might change?
I think I saw a lot. And it just, I just love this movie. It's so good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely willing to give it a rewatch down the line. It was something I liked to do. Like I said, my biggest complaint was there were parts that seemed a little Oscar baity to me, where I was just kind of like, you know, parts where they were really, really going for the emotion and really trying to make you feel the feels. I mean, it's kind of, we don't need to talk about this now, but that's kind of why I have issues with the Dead Poets Society. I know it's a beloved movie, but for me, I'm just like, it's so schmaltzy. It's trying so hard to make you feel things.
Everyone on this podcast listening, we are not afraid to make takes.
Clearly.
We'll take your childhood, beloved, whatever, and we'll make a take, and you may not like it. So just wait till we start some Star Wars episodes.
Yeah. I think the parts where they were really trying to make you feel something were the parts I wasn't as on board with. The parts where it was just sort of quietly about prison life were moments where I was like, that is... yes. Moments where they were just sitting in the circle and reading, those moments were the moments that I felt, and that's kind of what pushed it to the fore, was those moments, as well as just, you know, I mean, the moments where they're just talking about a little bit about like masculinity too, and what it means to be in this room with these men, being able to talk about your feelings. So like I said, there were parts for me where I was like, this wants an Oscar for XYZ, but I do think there are moments that are just sort of like quietly beautiful. But yeah, kind of the same thing as Shawshank. I'm not really feeling higher than a 4, but I'm also willing to rewatch it. Whereas Shawshank, now that I've seen it twice, I'm like, I don't think this rating is going anywhere. I could possibly see Sing Sing going up a half star in a later watch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that was our arts and charts, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye.